Hi friends, I hope you are all doing well. Today I'm going to be coming at you with a stack of DVDs that are my most rewatched horror movies. I wanted to do this list because in my most rewatched aren't necessarily my favourite films of all time. These are more comfort movies. There is a few that are my favourites that are evidently going to be in this list. However, they're not all. It's not my top 10 horror movies of all time, because some on that list I don't necessarily rewatch all the time. However, the ones in this list I have probably seen at least 15 times each. So let's just get right into it. Also, just to make you aware, I grew up in the 2000s/2010s, so a lot of these movies are going to be from around those eras. There is a couple of standouts that are not part of the rule of this sort of thing, but a lot of my comfort movies and the ones that I have seen the most would be from the 2000s/2010s. So to get it out the way, my favourite film of all time is Scream. I love that franchise. These films are a comfort movie to me. If I need something just to stick on, Scream is probably going to be the movie I put on. Scream was one of the first horror movies that I ever watched, being about 4 or 5 years old. I have been obsessed with it ever since. I do have a VHS of the first Scream film. It's currently very high up on my DVD shelf, so I can't get it down to show you. Comfort film, absolutely love everything about at least the first Scream film. Again, I have mentioned that I do love all the Scream films, but the first one will always be my favourite film of all time. Up next, this is another film that is also in my top 10 of all time, so I'm going to get this out the way before I go into some of the other ones, and that is Pan's Labyrinth. I have loved this film since I was a child, like with Scream. It was a film that I saw in the supermarket when my mama took me to do the monthly shop, and I had been watching the Jim Henson's The Labyrinth with David Bowie, and I don't know why my young mind thought that this was Jim Henson's The Labyrinth. It evidently isn't. Guillermo del Toro's vision in this is absolutely phenomenal. He is one of my all-time favourite directors. This film scared me to death when I was about 9, and I have loved it ever since. I watched it so many times when I was young, and every couple of years I give this another watch. It's so beautiful. I love the shots in it. I love the story of it so much, and it is such a comfort film to me now, as much as it scared me when I was 9 years old. Yeah, I genuinely just adore everything about this film. I also can't wait to meet Doug Jones, who plays Pan and the Pale Man in these, and he's been in a few other Guillermo del Toro films. He was also in Hellboy. I'm very excited to meet him. He is coming to For the Love of Horror in October, so I am so excited for that. Up next, this is probably the newest release that is going to be on this list. Now, just to make you aware, I didn't want to go into like full franchises. I didn't want to take multiple films out of a franchise and say these are in my most rewatched, because I actually wanted to have a bit of a variety in here. So this is Alien Romulus. I have seen this a total of 3 times since its release in August. It's been, like I say, I've watched this quite a few times since its release not that long ago. I could have put the first Alien film on this list as well. That is another comfort movie of mine. I absolutely adore the first Alien movie, but Alien Romulus is a very close second to me, then followed by Aliens. This is a great movie, one of my favourite of last year, and if you haven't already seen it, I highly recommend it as well. Gives me a lot of Aliens vibes, and I am totally here for it. It's so amazing, and I love Fede Alvarez and his vision behind making Alien Romulus. It was just amazing. So another one that I didn't want to bring up with multiple films, because I could easily do this, that is Final Destination 3. This is personally my favourite of the franchise, then followed by the first Final Destination from 2000. I was obsessed with this film. I've had this copy of Final Destination 3 for about 15 years. It was one of the first it used to be part of like a big box set, but they're all separate DVDs. The box ends up getting quite beat up over time, so I now just have the DVDs separate on my shelf. But I've had this copy for as long as I can remember. It was one of the first sort of box sets that I had. I am getting into horror and stuff like that. I am absolutely terrified of roller coasters, and even before watching this was a huge fear of mine. And the reason why it's sort of my favourite is not only are the deaths most memorable to me personally, the roller coaster, I've been like in the fear of roller coasters, and the premonition feels very personal to me and my fears, so this is why it is my all-time favourite. Again, like I say, I have watched the first one as well countless times, but it has to be the third one on this list. Another one for sort of franchise sake, I'm going to say Saw. These films are some of my favourite films as well. I get into one of those moods and I watch Saw from start to finish with all of the films, going with even Spiral and Jigsaw and Saw X as well, which is fantastic. And I get into the moods quite often where I am just watching Saw constantly. Back when I was very young and getting into sort of more gorier films, there was always at least one of the Saw movies that were on like ITV when I was growing up, whether that be Saw 3 or I go and watch Saw 5, Saw 7, you know, there was always a Saw movie on. And even though I hadn't probably watched them all in its entirety, I'd seen so many different, because I used to just put it on and not know what time it started or anything, so I'd just watch it from the point that I would turn it on. And I've loved these films since I was maybe 12 years old, and I used to look up Saw clips on YouTube as well. I was so obsessed with this franchise. And yeah, the first Saw movie is absolutely phenomenal, and I've probably seen that about 15 times. I absolutely adore these movies. Probably the oldest film that I'm going to have on this list, and this was a personal favourite of mine when I was a teenager, and that is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. I used to put this on so many times as a teenager, and for a long time it was in my top 3 horror movies of all time. I have such a deep love for this film. However, it's not in my top 10 anymore as I have grown older and things like that, but absolutely adore this film. I also love the book by Robert Bloch, and that came out a year before the film, and so it was 1959 and the film came out in 1960. We've got Janet Leigh and Anthony Perkins, and just such a great cast. Anthony Perkins was perfect for Norman Bates, and I have loved these films since I was maybe 15. Again, it's another comfort film of mine. If I am in the mood for like a sort of black and white older film, this is the film that I'm going to put on. I don't know if everybody's going to consider this as a horror. I consider this very much as a horror action film. This is another film where I have watched this maybe every couple of years since I was a child, and that is Underworld. I love the first Underworld. The first and the third one are my favourites of the franchise. I was obsessed with this film as well growing up, and as like a 12-year-old this was probably in my top 3 films of all time. The only one that was sort of topped this was Scream for me back then. I have seen the first one and the third one so many times. I got my partner to watch this a few years ago, and he absolutely hated this movie. When I told him the idea of this video and I was mentioning Underworld will be on the list because of how much I loved it and watched it, and he was like, that movie is rubbish. But it has aged. I mean, it was like 2003 that this came out, 2002 possibly, I don't know off the top of my head. 2003 I'm gonna say. Kate Beckinsale and Scott Speedman, also Bill Nye as well. Great cast in this movie. And again, I particularly love the third one, where it goes into like a prequel from like a thousand years before. It's not on the list because I haven't rewatched it as much as I watched this one. Absolutely adore this film. Up next we have the remake of The Crazies. I love this film. I also really love the George A. Romero Crazies. This one is very different to the original one. I love the change from the original compared to the remake, and they are very much more zombie like rage virus in this one, and I genuinely love this film. I don't consider it a zombie film by any means. However, there is some sort of rage infection films that I do consider zombie films, but this one I don't. They just make people crazy. It was 2010 that this film came out. I adored this film so much. This is another copy that I've probably had in my collection for the longest time. Probably one of the first horror movies that I was bought for like Christmas and things. Probably not long after its release in 2010. I think the last time I saw this was probably a year ago, and again, still holds up, still love it, and if you haven't seen The Crazies, I highly recommend it. Up next we have a film that my friends used to joke about in school. It was one of those films that everybody was sort of watching around the time, and that is Drag Me to Hell. This film still holds up. You can tell it's a Sam Raimi film. It's absolutely incredible. I love Justin Long in this film as well. I know my friends used to laugh about that one scene in it where the sort of demon devil comes up the stairs and stands at the outside of the door. Not spoiling anything, but if you know, you know. And my friend used to laugh that it was like it was a devil in high heels or something. It's not my favourite Sam Raimi film by any means. I also really enjoy obviously the Evil Dead franchise. I also love The Quick and the Dead as well. But this is up there for one of my favourite Sam Raimi films. It just wouldn't be my first pick. Justin Long is one of my favourite actors, and he is fantastic in this. Sam Raimi still tries to implement all that ooze and goo and all that stuff, and it's fantastic, and if you haven't seen it, highly recommend this film as well. Now we have a film that absolutely roared through the 2010s, and that is Insidious. Now personally this is not my favourite Insidious film, however this is the one I've definitely watched the most. You know, I was one of them kids that used to stay up quite late on a school night with the lights off and watch random films. When this was released, I remember people saying that this was one of the scariest films ever, and I loved it. I love this so much. James Wan is absolutely phenomenal and has delivered us so many great franchises. Now there is a couple of these in the franchise that I don't really like, but I've definitely seen the first one the most. My favourite being probably Insidious Chapter 2. I love where that sort of takes off and follows on straight from the first one. Yeah, genuinely love the idea of this film, and you can see why this sort of took over the 2010s alongside The Conjuring. But yeah, that is my next one. Last but not least, we have the It miniseries. Now this was also in my top 10 way back when I was a teenager. I have seen this so many times despite how long this is, because it was a miniseries. I love Tim Curry in this role. It's probably my favourite role that he has done. I also love the child actors in this and the adult ones. I think they're great in this. This is very outdated now. It came out in 1990. And I remember this film being in my top 10 and getting so excited for the It remake, sort of re-release in the one that came out in 2017 with Bill Skarsgård. I've seen this so many times. I've gotten all my friends to watch it, and it's genuinely, it is one of them ones that is such a comfort watch for me. Clowns aren't really, I don't find clowns very scary. I know a lot of people are terrified of Tim Curry's It. I've not read the book. I know the books. I own the book, but the book's like this long. But hopefully one day I do give this a read, because I've always loved this film. So they were all my sort of top rewatched horror movies. I would love you all to tell me your most rewatched horror movies, and we can have a little discussion. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a lovely week, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.